the consumer of 2025 is infinitely more difficult to market to because we're marketed to all the time. So now it's noise. Branded content has gotten popular because the general perception of branded content is that's a way to break through the noise. But this kind of goes back to the marketer's trap. If I know deer season's coming up in 3 months and I need a pair of binoculars, when I flip open Deer and Deer Hunting magazine and see an ad for a pair of binoculars, am I going to stop and look? Yes, interruptional marketing still works, but it should work in conjunction with branded. Lead a campaign as a hook for branded marketing. I think campaigns are just higher in the hierarchy, and branded content falls underneath as a way to activate those campaigns.
Welcome to the Backcountry Marketing Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Trent Marsh. He is the marketing director at Riton Optics. Trent, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Trent, I'm excited to have you on the show today. We've got a variety of topics we're going to kind of bounce around through and talk about. We were originally connected because I put out a post on LinkedIn and I was like, hey guys, theoretically, what would happen if brands stopped producing campaigns and just produced branded content? And the comment section, there's some opinions. And it led to some good conversations. And Trent, you and I got connected through that. Yeah. And we started talking about this idea of branded content versus campaigns combining them. Mm-hmm. And we eventually realized Trent's got a lot of good ideas. We should bring you on the show and talk more. So we're going to talk about that idea, branded content and campaigns, when to use one versus the other. And then we're going to talk about a variety of other different things and kind of hot takes that you've got about the industry. So I'll stop talking. Trent, I'd love if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, so again, I'm the marketing director at Riton Optics. I've been in the marketing side of this space now for about 15 years. Been in the optics space before, been in the trail camera space before, and then also for about the last decade, done a lot of content creation as well. I do some freelance stuff for titles like Deer and Deer Hunting and Concealed Carry Magazine, Hunting and Tactical Retailer, some of the industry side stuff too. So just a little bit of everything on all sides of the industry. So I've got different opinions for all parts of it.
Well, let's dig into the first opinion. So the first thing that you talked about and you mentioned was what you called the marketer's trap. And you mentioned a couple specific things that I'd love for you to expand on. One, this idea of, as someone in the marketing department, are you thinking about your own consumption habits and behaviors? And then are you using that to help inform your own marketing plans? Second thing that you talked about was the trend of when marketing folks move to different positions or move between different companies, they often bring the same ensemble of contractors with them, for better or for worse. Tell me more about both of these points, and why do you call this the marketer's trap?
So the first one is kind of really the main one. That idea of, we all interact with marketing on a daily basis, and there's a way that we interact with it as a consumer of marketing. And then we show up at our 9 to 5 and we forget everything about the way that we interact with the marketing around us and go spend money in places that we ourselves would never actually interact with marketing that way. The main one I put a pin in here recently is social. It's not that there's no value to social, but this idea of, for as long as I've been in the industry, people, well, print's dying, print's dead, print's on its way out, there's no value there. And then you say, okay, well, great. How many Facebook ads are you clicking on? Well, I'm not clicking on any of those. Okay, but you go in and you put all of your budget in this bucket that you're telling me to you as a consumer of this stuff has no value, but whether it is the attribution that can go to it that can't to some other channels, or just the vanity metrics that come along, kind of daisy chaining along with that, you end up throwing all your money to this when virtually none of your purchasing pattern lines up with the channel that you're doing. That was kind of the first place that I identified as the trap. And then the second part of that is, if we've worked in the industry, or I'm sure it's the same in other industries, but most of my adult life has been spent in this one, you can pretty much look and see, okay, well, so and so went here, they're going to drag X, Y, and Z. They're going to bring this company, they're going to bring this influencer, and they have this group, this horde of people that kind of, it doesn't even matter if it's really a great fit for this new product category. It's just, these are the people I'm comfortable with, even if they're not the A plus answer. Rather than go out and find a better answer, I'm just going to keep working with the people that I'm comfortable with. And it's just the other side of the same coin. This here, the first one is, I hate this, but I'm going to spend money on this because I can see where it goes, or whatever the case may be. And the other is, well, this is my blankie. This is what makes me feel warm and fuzzy. So I'm just going to stick with this regardless of whether or not they're the right people in the right place at the right time. They make me feel good. So we're going to charge forward. We're, for better or worse, this is how we're going to roll. And I think they both end up being a trap that we see people fall into.
Yeah, why is it a trap? Why is it a problem?
Because if you're not taking a look at everything objectively, you're not doing the best job that you can do. You're not presenting the best array. If on the first part, if you're just putting money in things that you can justify, even you don't believe that they work that you don't believe in is never going to be as good as work that you do. That's the first part. And the second part, if you're just blindly, I know that I can work with this person, so I'm going to drag them along. If you're not looking at it objectively and saying, okay, but what we're selling isn't really this niche. They might still be great for expanding markets or something like that, but we see blinders go on way too often where it's just, no, this is what I'm comfortable with. This is what I want to do. And then they miss so much because they're caught up in, this worked where I was last time, so this is what we're going to do. It's a fine line between, I know what I'm doing because I've done it before and here's what it looks like, and I'm going to keep always working with only the same people and only the same contractors, and there's no way to grow and expand this. And it leads to a real myopic approach to both sides of the equation. You end up missing so much.
So, okay, I want to expand more on this first point of not evaluating your own consumption habits and then applying that to your job. So I feel like I could see that being true. I also feel like, though, having interviewed a lot of folks who do a lot of marketing in the outdoor industry, I almost sometimes think that we rely too much on our own personal behaviors and opinions, and we don't take a more sophisticated or scientific method or, MBA level approach to how we market. So talk to me about, there's kind of two extremes to this, obviously. Oh, yeah. But do you see that as well?
Yeah, there are marketers who definitely fall on both ends of that extreme. And that if there is something that keeps me awake as a marketer, and for people who don't work in marketing on a daily basis, like to try to explain to them what the hard part is, so much of what we do can't be measured. As much as we want to say that it can, you can never survey every purchaser of your product, every user of your product. At some point, it's going to come down to anecdote. Because for years, I've said that, especially in this industry, social media gave all of the information to marketing averse leadership that they ever wanted. Because whether or not the data is complete and tells the whole story, it doesn't matter. It's the same idea with like affiliate. Well, it's this last click attribution model. Well, they clicked on this and they came to our website. Who clicked on our magazine ad? Well, nobody. But did they only click on your social ad because they've been seeing your print ad for 3 or 4 years and they have comfort with that? There's, as much as we may want to say there's a way to get to a point to say, well, we can attribute that and we can put together a model that accounts for, no, you can't. Like some of it, sure. But the hard and fast reality is there is no hard and fast reality. It is interpretation of, here are the logs that are on the fire. Some of them are wet, some of them are bone dry, which ones are burning? At the end of the day, they all end up burning, but which one catches faster, which one burns best, all of that is up to interpretation, and it's tough to isolate those things. So that's where some folks go more, and I'll self-identify, I'll point the thumb here. I absolutely go more by feel. But at this point, it is working with and building 4 different brands over the course of 15 years, knowing what you see work over time rather than just, well, what worked in the last 3 months.
I've heard it said that measuring brand is like measuring love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I think is like, I love that, that explanation. Like, it makes so much sense.
Well, and they go hand in hand, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to build with your brand is affinity, and that's what love is. So how can I create, even if you aren't a user of my brand, and even if you never want to be a user of my brand, I still want to present my brand to you in a way that you think enough of it that you don't speak ill of it. And that's as much the game we play as anything. You don't need everyone to be an acolyte if you don't have any detractors. Neutral is not always a bad place to be. So I hadn't heard that specific example, but I like it because it's hand in glove for what you're trying to do.
So let's come back to this balancing data and anecdotes. You started out by saying digital gave leadership all the information or ammo that they need to kill branding. Yeah. So is that just kind of a hot take? Do you see that permeating throughout?
Oh yeah. That is 15 years of conversations with leadership saying, we don't think this is working. We think this is. Why can't I see X when I can see Y? Like I said, right now, the place where you're seeing it, and not even necessarily with leadership, but you can tell a lot about where a specific marketing channel is in its life cycle based on who's trying to sell you the management of that channel and what that looks and sounds like. And right now you see it a lot with affiliate, where people are saying, you don't need to bother with all this brand building. That's not something you need to do. We can do all of this on the back of affiliate and a 10% commission, and just go out and, seed some product and get some visibility out there. And it's not that affiliate isn't a viable channel. But I had all but a knockdown drag out at an industry event not that long ago of people essentially saying that you don't need to be doing all of this. And one of the use cases that they gave was a brand that has been one of the most ardent advertisers in print over the last 2.5 decades. Their brand awareness is through the roof. And then you come in at the tail end with some affiliate campaign. I bet you converted well. That makes of course you did. All the groundwork had been laid for you to do that. Same with social. If you're a pinnacle brand and someone sees, if you're talking to your audience properly and you're targeting them properly, you know how to talk to them. Getting them to click is not hard. But if you're new kid on the block that doesn't have any history, it's exactly the opposite. That doesn't mean that your marketing and your branding isn't working. You just don't have the credibility or the life cycle with the consumer for that to be as actionable. So like with affiliate, my whole buzzword around it has been that affiliate marketing is a mechanism by which you leverage existing awareness, not create new. If you have awareness, that's a great channel for you. Keep it in front of people. Hammer, 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 hammer. Keep it in front of people. But if you're new, 2 brands that I don't necessarily work with, if you are Scree, for example, make a really nice camo product, not nearly as well known as Sitka. If you're an affiliate, you make money off the people that click links. You can only share so many links before your credibility's gone. So when you sit down and look at it, I can share a Sitka link and everybody's going to know about it. Everybody's going to be interested. And And more often than not, my audience is going to respond positively to that marketing. Then you take a brand like Scree that's newer, not as well known, not as defined. If you're the affiliate, which link are you going to share? The one that's more likely to get you paid, or the one that you have to explain to your consumer? That's digital in a nutshell. You can explain some of that, but in the short term, if all you're doing is social, you're not going to have any metrics that back anything up. You have to create touch points anywhere. There can't be a room in which you aren't taking up some of the oxygen, because it's too easy to be missed in so many of these channels. So even if you can't have as big of a presence as some of these others, you have to at least look like you're pretending in enough of those places so that when sales guys are on the road, well, I don't see you on TV. Well, I don't see you in print. Why am I not seeing you here? We can all look and know the places that we need to be to hit that level of critical mass, essentially, that you are visible enough that then any of those other individual channels carry more weight. Good marketing is omnichannel. It's not, we're going to own digital. That's fine. You own digital. I will take all of that print oxygen that you just gave up and I'll buy it. Well, we're just going to go TV and influencers. Cool. I'm going to own you on social. If you're not a little bit of everywhere, which budgets are tough, but that's what we get paid for, is finding the right balance, finding the right ROI to make it look like good marketing always looks like you're doing way more than you actually are. That's the balance, is how do I put the money into the buckets where spending $5,000 looks like 20? How can I spend $50,000 and make it look like 100? That's the tough part. But when leadership just wants to see, well, we got 500 people on the website last week because of this social ad. How many people on the website did that ad in Guns Magazine bring in? The answer, unless you stand on your website, which you can't do, with a clicker that says, where did you see us that made you want to come do this? And there was a really interesting case study when I was in college. It was for like a jewelry store in New Jersey. They did this as a marketing survey. Where did you hear about us? And like 10% of respondents said television and 15 said radio. And so it was this whole mismatch. The only advertising they had ever done was in a local newspaper. That was it. Not 10 years ago no, they had only ever advertised in the local newspaper. The consumer didn't even know where they heard about them, but they did it consistently enough that over time, they just became part of that community. That, to some extent, that matters, but that just means that your touch points have to matter more. You know, that anecdote was from like the 50s. So you didn't have social, there was so much more you didn't have. So it mattered more, but that just means now, with all of the options that you have, every one of them carries more weight, because if you're not there, you have a competitor that's there. Do you want them to own that space, or do you want to take up any bit of that you can from them?
Do they carry more weight, or is there less weight because there's more channels to choose from?
I think you could argue it both ways. I really think you could argue it both ways, because you could say, well, there are, if you line it out, depending on how you look at it, 7 to 12-ish channels that you need to talk to people in. You could say, well, if I'm not in 2 or 3, it doesn't matter because I'm hitting all of these others. But it almost has to be evaluated on a category by category and competitor basis, because if your competitors are also leaving those spaces open, then those matter less. But if you're getting absolutely owned in one of those, where does it rank in the hierarchy, and what percent? It's a sliding scale on all axes to determine exactly what that looks like.
Yeah. So something I've heard on this podcast many times in the last year or so, and I don't know if it's just optimistic thinking, but people like to put paid and brand on either side, and they describe it as a pendulum, right? And the pendulum swings between where are brands placing their emphasis. And some people are speculating that the pendulum is swinging back towards brand. Now, this is kind of some of these folks are like in like classic outdoor, so ski, hike, climb, mountaineering. What's your take in the hunt and firearm side? You have a point of view on that?
I think it's been on brand for quite some time. I would say the pendulum has been more on the brand side for probably the last decade. Paid never went away. That's the only thing that kind of that pendulum never goes to 100, right? It kind of stays in that middle 30% that you're working on. But I think brand has been pretty heavy. I think it's probably sliding more back towards paid. And I think a lot of that is because of this, even talking to other people in the industry, there's a very blurry line between influencers and affiliate. And because affiliate is kind of the buzzword right now, there's a lot of time and effort being devoted to affiliate, which I would consider that a paid category, where I think a lot of brands have been doing the brand thing and realize that finding an audience is really difficult. Unless you are one of those heritage brands that kind of on the leading edge of social media was able to go out and pick up 100,000 Facebook followers or 250,000 on Instagram just by nature of being the brand that you are. If you're not one of those brands, I'm investing $15,000 in this super slick, cool brand video that got 250 likes and or views on YouTube. Like, building that audience is really hard. And I think we've seen enough leadership kind of look at it and say, yeah, this all looks really good, but how much marketing could we have gone out and bought to actually build brand visibility and awareness for what it cost us to do this 3-part hunting series or produce this podcast or whatever the case may be. So I actually think we're sliding away from brand and more back to paid, and we're seeing the value of, sure, it makes me feel good and it looks good for the brand to go out and create these shiny things. But at the end of the day, I need an audience. And if the audience for my shiny things is 2,000 people a month, that's the open rate on a single third-party list for some of these better lists. Our resources are better marshaled, especially in the buying environment that we're in right now, with the economy the way that it is coming. We're in Trump slump 2.0, and just overall sales where they're at, the way that the landscape has changed from 20 years ago. I think everybody is just vying for as many eyeballs as possible, even if they're repetitive, even if they're eyeballs they already had. I think we're seeing that swing back to paid.
Interesting. So you talk about finding an audience, and I love that you brought this up, because this is something that we do, our company makes a lot of branded content, branded films and that type of stuff. And one of the things we always talk about before we get started is okay, it's great to want to do this, but do you actually have an audience that wants to receive this? Who are we talking to specifically? And like you said, finding an audience is so difficult. It takes time, but this feels like a big opportunity if you have the runway and the patience to do it. And finding an audience, I mean, this is a result, this is part of the brand building process, is finding who your audience is. But is now not an opportunity to try and find that audience and really identify who they are, and not just be oh, our audience is every single turkey hunter in America, but we're going to get, I don't know what the parameters are, right? To find it.
And it's not easy to put a parameter on it, because it's that same sliding scale for which channels are important, right? If I would say there's, just right off the top, because I don't have it, I'd say there's probably 3 things that you kind of have to, just right off the top of my head, you got to tick these boxes first before you can say that it's worthwhile. First, I think doing a lot of branded content, if you're not already a brand with a defined identity, is kind of like playing chess in the dark. Because
Well said.
if you might be, let's say you can find an audience, but you're not a brand that has this defined identity. There's not enough context around it for your audience to know how authentic it is. It seems counterintuitive, but so many of these like branded, like the hunt videos, for example, they come off as inauthentic because there's no anchor to anything. It's just, okay, well, my audience wants to see hunting, so we're going to give them hunting content. Sure, I sell hunting product, but if that's not defined enough with the audience, then that matters. The other one that's a big part of this, and I think this is actually probably where the most brands trip. There are so many great personalities out there anymore that have a following. If your anchor to the content is the brand, that rings incredibly hollow. People don't care about a bear hunt. They care about someone that they are interested in going on a bear hunt. There are personalities that I would sit and listen to them read the phone book, not because what they're doing is interesting, but because that person is someone that I'm invested in. Most of these brands don't have someone that's fully in-house to be able to anchor this stuff around that it matters for the brand. You might have an influencer that has enough of an audience that you can build a brand piece around one of your influencers or one of the people that you're working with. But then that becomes that's their story then. It's not a brand X story. It's a story about Hunter Joe Smith because I like Hunter Joe Smith. So those are the first two. And then the third one, which is a harsh reality for all of us. If you don't have the budget to make it be authentic and quality, it's kind of like going back to 2015 and the whole idea of you're better off not having a Facebook page than having a bad Facebook page. Like, you don't want to create an opportunity for your branded content to become a meme. That's worst case scenario, right? If it just ends up being cringe, I do not subscribe to the all publicity is good publicity. No, there's lots of bad publicity that is bad publicity. And that, to me, that's one of them. And it, like, I honestly think, like, you might have an influencer that goes and catches a charge for poaching or baiting or whatever. I actually think that's easier to say, look, I didn't know they were doing that. We've cut ties with them. We're moving on. But if you do something legitimately cringe from a brand standpoint, I think that stays with the brand longer, because looking inauthentic, not telling a good story, looking like you're trying to do something cheap, whether you like it or not, that now becomes part of the word cloud for your brand. And that's because it was brand content. It wasn't third-party influencer. Hey, we found out that guy's kind of a bag. We can get away from him. Nope. You just tied that anvil around the brand's neck, and you have to live with that until people forget. And the internet doesn't let people forget.
Yeah. Do you follow Huckberry at all?
No.
So they do an excellent job producing branded content on YouTube. And to your point about personality and people, they have 2 to 3, maybe 4 individuals who are really kind of the face of the brand, right? Mm-hmm. There's the CMO who was on their show a while ago, Ben O'Meara. He's one of the personalities of the YouTube channel. They've got they do an excellent series called Dirt, which we had the director of the show on this on our podcast, Kate West, and the host of that show. You know, he's a charismatic guy with personality, and he is the name. He is the face of this particular show that they produce. I couldn't agree more. I love what you're saying here: identity, personality, and then the budget to do it right and to do it well. It seems like, though, finding that personality, like that's very hard. Difficult to do. You've seen this with some outdoor brands where big outdoor brands will bring on a personality to be the face of a series, and then something happens. I don't know if the creator is like, oh, I'm not getting paid enough, I'm gonna leave, or if they get too big for their britches, or if they're like, hey, actually, why do I need this brand? Because I am the face of this. I could just start my own channel and just start like this. I've seen this happen a couple times. How could a brand go about finding a personality and then not losing that personality down the road? Is that even possible, or is that just a risk that you have to accept?
That's the risk. You can buffer it, but it's always going to be a risk. You can either lean into the fact that we're just going to go third party and bring in someone that has the audience to help boost it. And if this gets sideways, just live with that fact. You can do it that way. I think that is the higher floor, lower ceiling. Like that's the Blanky model, right? Like, let's find someone we have a relationship with. They might not be perfect, but it's good enough. And we're not trying to create something out of whole cloth. In a perfect world, you're able to find someone that's a core integral part of your team that has a personality that you have enough runway with to be able to, this is where that first bullet of you have to be a brand big enough that you can get enough eyeballs to let the brand create the personality. But I think if we look at it from what's more likely to be stable, relationship with third-party influencer, even if it's someone we have a history with, or our marketing assistant just happens to kill it on camera and be good at this, and he could be here for 15, 30, retire here in 40 years, which one of these is more likely to give us long-term stability? And then you can allow that persona to kind of grow organically through it. Infinitely more difficult because most brands in this space are way smaller than the average bear looking from the outside thinks these companies are. You think there's 200 people that work at this brand, and it's like 15 people just hustling their tails off for one of those people to now have to become the standard bearer of content. Like, that's not easy or fast. That is highly time consuming and a whole other problem that you have to navigate around. But you talk about the higher ceiling, but then conversely the lower floor too. That can absolutely fall on its face.
So with all of these components that are necessary, like these are all ingredients to a concoction that is required in order for branded content to be successful. Having the audience, having the identity, having the personality, having the resources and time and patience to pull all this off. Despite all of that, if you can do it, is it worth the ups? Like, is the upside worth it?
Oh, 1,000%. 100. I mean, just yes, emphatically, yeah. And even if you can't do it perfectly, I still think there's value there. There's still value there. There's no one way to do branded content. You know, if you're kind of what we were painting, that last little example we were giving was very much in like the video, like it really revolved around essentially creating like a brand television series.
Yeah.
Branded content is a hydra. You can do branded content all kinds of ways. Just because you don't have the personality or the budget to create a true category leading vlog series doesn't mean that you don't have someone that can generate written content that's killer or fantastic, even if it's just like lifestyle photos for your Instagram feed. Like, that's all branded content. That's not necessarily, back to how we originally started this conversation, of the dichotomy between long-term branded content versus individual campaigns. None of that stuff would really fall in the campaign bucket, but it's also not what people think when you say branded content. You know, the explain to me what you think that means. Most people are going to say, well, it's a video series or it's a podcast or something like that. That's all super personality focused. If you don't have a personality, there's 10 other ways to do branded content that can help create that authenticity and that visibility around your brand that gives you the edge over the people that aren't doing it. There's no reason to not do those things while you're looking for the A answer somewhere else. You can still do mid-level branded content to improve website SEO and to make you look like the brand is aware of the problems that the consumer has and is actively trying to make their life easier, even if it's not directly with the widget or the product that I sell. Can I get a guest blog written by someone that's solving a problem that we know people are looking for the answers for? That still has value. There's no reason to punt on all branded content because you can't do the coolest, slickest version of it.
Well, and to that point, so let's say you have the audience, you have the identity, you have the personality, and you have the budget. That's just like the starting point. You don't even know what you're creating. And so to your point, like you could use all of these other forms of branded content to basically be doing R&D, like testing out ideas, writing about topics, seeing what's getting engagement, seeing like these are all data points that you can then use to, if and when you so desire, you then pull the trigger on that big branded video podcast, video, vlog series, whatever it is. Like it's social listening through branded content.
Well, and a lot of it's internal listening too, because there are brands that do branded content as a vanity mechanism. The leadership that wants this done, I don't care if it generates a sale or a lead. I want to see our brand do this. And I just want to be able to point to this at a board meeting or at the annual meeting, whatever the case may be. They just want to be able to point to it and say, this is a thing that we did. And that's fine.
How much of the work that's being done, how much do you think it's solely out of vanity and not out of strategy?
20%.
That's more than I thought.
I think probably 20%. I think it would take some sodium pentothal to get that to like there's admitted vanity, and then there's vanity by omission. Like I don't think a lot of places are coming out and saying we're doing this as vanity, but it doesn't take, like, at some point when you market for 15 years, the effect that marketing has on you is a little bit different. You can look at some campaigns and you can look at branded content and you can kind of tell, okay, is this part of a larger arc that they're trying to build? Or is this just somebody that could okay the budget or authorize the budget said, I want X thing that looks like this, go do it. It's kind of the old George Carlin line. You don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge. Like it's still, you don't all have to sit in the boardroom and go, we're making a vanity video. If you have a videographer on staff that just wants to make everything look slick, and you have a marketing director that's like, I want some big like you can just kind of land in vanity without necessarily admitting it, if that makes sense. And
sure.
That's kind of where I get that 20% number. I think there's a lot of it that's just kind of vanity by default.
Gotcha. Okay, let's move on and talk about campaigns and branded content. When should you use one versus the other? How do they work well together? And I'd love for you to answer my original LinkedIn question. Hypothetically, what would happen if a brand only produces branded content?
That was the initial LinkedIn post, and I'll kick off the whole discussion the same way I answered that. I don't know why we're having the discussion as a dichotomy, because it shouldn't be one or the other, because your branded content should supplement your campaigns and vice versa. I kind of mentioned it earlier. Good marketing is omnichannel. It's also omni-platform. It's also omni-strategy. You can't just say, we're going to market to whitetail hunters on Facebook from August to September and expect to have a successful brand. That's not going to work. But a lot of this is actually easier, specifically in the shoot hunt world, because so much of what we do is seasonal. It's not toilet paper, and it's not number 2 pencils, and it's not dry erase markers that you just need them on a Tuesday in June. If I'm a deer hunter, in Indiana, my season opened yesterday. And I can look at that date And for anyone marketing to me, they all know his season starts October 1st. We have to have everything that we need. We got to have it wrapped up by October 1st. Okay, great. We need to lead his purchasing decisions by 90 to 120 days. What does that look like? And build from there. That's the beginning of your campaign. You should run on that larger campaign in general, and there's going to be smaller spike campaigns throughout. But the consumer of 2025 is infinitely more difficult to market to than they were 20, 30, 50, 75 years ago, because we're marketed to all the time. So now it's noise. Branded content has gotten popular because the general perception of branded content is that's a way to break through the noise, to beat the banner blindness, and give someone something that is air quote authentic and air quote genuine, that they'll pay attention to this when they wouldn't pay attention to it if it was an email newsletter or a banner or an interruptional commercial or full page ad in a magazine. That's why branded content got popular. But this kind of goes back to the marketer's trap. If I know deer season's coming up in 3 months and I need a pair of binoculars, when I flip open Deer and Deer Hunting magazine and see an ad for a pair of binoculars, am I going to stop and look? Yes. That's why traditional advertising has worked for as long. Pompeii has signs of barbers that are they were doing that 2,000 years ago. Oh yeah, I need a haircut. There's a sign for a barber. I'm going to go get it. Interruptional marketing still works, but it should work in conjunction with branded, because some people are always going to be harder to advertise to. Some people are going to stay outside of your traditional loops. But if your branded content is riding along on the same kind of cyclical and seasonal major campaign, then as you do little individual campaigns, can a video or an article about whitetail hunting, does that become the anchor of an email newsletter that you're sending out that also has a 15% coupon at the bottom to get somebody to buy something? Do you lead with 15% off, or do you lead with, here's the 3 trees you're choosing for your tree stand that you need to stop doing today? I love negative headlines. Everybody clicks a negative headline because they want to tell you that you're wrong about the way that you tell them that they're wrong, and they want to argue with you about you telling them that they're wrong. So lead a campaign as a hook for branded marketing, and especially with when we go back to how many different channels there are, when I'm really in full-on campaign mode, that has to hit print and YouTube and linear television and podcast and linear radio, and it has to hit all of these things at the same time. It can't look and feel the same everywhere. Some places it might be a 5-second pop-up that says 15% off because it's whatever sale. Somewhere else it's going to be content driven. Somewhere else it's going to be photo driven. There's all these different ways that you can activate on a campaign. I think campaigns are just higher in the hierarchy, and branded content falls underneath as a way to activate those campaigns.
Gotcha. So, okay, this is a question I've had for a long time now. Look at creators, people who, YouTube channels, people who run channels.
Mm-hmm.
Many of these creators, they reach a certain following, and then they start to launch their own product. Mm-hmm. There's a channel that I follow. It's called A Lockpicking Lawyer, and he literally just picks locks, and it's fascinating. And now he's got his own product line of lockpicks. This individual doesn't run a campaign when he launches a new product, right? He makes a video about it, and whatever he does. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is like where I start to wonder, like, effectively these creators are just producing branded content. Why can't brands just follow a similar pattern? Like, what are the differences? What are the nuances? And I'm sure there's many, but when you look at the creator world, it's a very different model than it is for the brand world. What's the lesson, though, that brands could learn from creators around this model that they could steal from or learn from and apply to their own world with their own set of parameters?
Authenticity. Content for the sake of content has tremendous value. So much of what we see masquerading as branded content is a commercial that we don't want to call a commercial, that is hyper product oriented, that ends up bastardizing the message of what they're really trying to get through. What the focus should be on is the use case, is the experience, not, well, but you need SKU number 27851-B to go do this, and like make it, you would get way more return out of making it less about you and your product. Because in most instances, the influencers that matter and the content creators that matter, they might be working product in, but they aren't a slave to the product, because that feels very inauthentic. It gets very boring very quickly to feel like you're being sold something. That's not fun content. What the good ones do is, here's really fun content, and if you like this, here are the people that support me, or good work in of that content to work on just getting it seen in a very natural and cohesive way, not a 30-second breakdown and a 25-second cut to a product sheet and a link to the site. And so much of the branded content we see is really just, I wanted to make a commercial, but we know that's not going to work. So we're going to pretend that it's branded content, but it's an infomercial.
So if you were to start your own company, a product company in, the hunt and firearm space, and if one of your key strategies for growing and building this brand was to, become a media company, essentially, like what sort of media would you start producing? I'm just curious. What are untapped or unrealized stories or ideas that you think could be interesting, because there's a million whitetail hunting series and podcast episodes out there. Like, what route might you go?
Tell me if this is too much of an evasion of the question, but to me, it matters more about the personalities that I would be more focused initially on finding someone that I thought the internet writ large can care about. Because all the content is going to be exactly the same as everyone else's content. The content, it's narrow. When I first started writing in this industry, I had a magazine not pay me for an article that I wrote. They didn't pay me for the article that I wrote because 30% of it communicated. I used a story of a hunt to communicate a larger point around a product that I had done in another blog post that was about 80% shorter. And they said, well, you already did this. I'm not going to pay you for this when you already did this. I said, oh, you don't pay for turkey hunting content then? I said, what do you mean? I said, every turkey hunting article ever that runs in February of every year is quit calling so much, quit moving around so much, and go where the birds are. If I write that for you, are you going to pay me for that? Well, yeah. Okay. Then I don't know, like, what new can you say about turkey hunting? What new can you say about so much of it is just, it's maybe a different spin on it. It's maybe a different way to tell it. But in so many of these instances, it has more to do with the voice that's delivering the message than what is actually being said. So whether that is, I've got a writer that I can work with that is killer at negative headlines and writing those clickbaity articles that do well in social that aren't true clickbait. There's good information there. It's just done with a really cool hook. Or someone that's just really good at delivering content on video a little bit differently. It would be more about the personality for me than it would the actual content, just because I think that's the next article that I read that I legit go, I've never had that thought or never spoken to someone that's like, they are one or two a year where I literally sit back in my chair and go, okay, I hadn't thought of that quite like that. The vast majority of it is just a different tone or a different take or a different hook to make it the same content land just a little bit different. Was that at all an answer to your question?
100%. And I think it's such a great reminder worth reiterating. Like, folks, if you're producing any sort of content, like, lead with the personality behind the content. How many ski videos that are labeled as branded storytelling do you see where the athlete, I'm sorry to say it, but the athletes aren't interesting. Like, there's zero personality behind what you're producing. And sure, the skiing is sick and the line is cool. I love that answer.
Well, and it kind of goes like, it's that branding is love thing. If you think about content in the same way, I'm happily married, but if I had to start dating tomorrow, I could meet someone that has a good job and can tick all of these boxes. If they're not fun to be around, am I gonna want to be in a relationship with them? And if that, I hadn't ever heard it put that way, but there's been a couple things as we've talked through, like, okay, yeah, if we make this about dating and relationships and that type of thing, okay, I see it. I can see where that makes sense. And I think that falls into the same thing. If you're not fun to be around, it doesn't matter a lot of the other stuff. This isn't going to work. It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, well, it almost, so I'm looking, this is a really silly example, but like on my desk here, I've got a brochure for some metal roofing, and I'm like ordering some parts because I'm installing some metal roofing on my house. And I just had the thought, I was like, there is only one person who I would listen to read this brochure about metal roofing to me, and it might be Morgan Freeman or Matthew McConaughey. But think about like how solely because of their personality, they can make something as stale as a brochure about metal roofing interesting. And maybe that there's enough said there just to like sum up your point. Yeah, personality, it's everything.
Yeah.
What haven't we talked about that you want to leave folks with?
I bagged on affiliate a little bit. I could literally talk about it for days. I mean, we hit on the big stuff we needed to talk about. That it was a fun conversation that we had initially, in that idea of, branded content versus campaigns. And honestly, like if you want me to sum up my marketing theology in one thing that I think more people need, if I could get more marketers thinking this way, good marketing is omnichannel. It is absolutely not. You'll never fail at marketing because you didn't put all of your eggs in one basket. There's a lot of ways to fail at marketing. It will never be because you didn't put all your eggs in one basket. I've been doing it, like I said, 15 years. And literally from the day I sat down and started doing this, I've had people tell me, print's dying, quit wasting your time on print, don't invest in print. It's a dead outlet. There's no value there. I've got 4 brands and 15 years of what passes for successful marketing that says otherwise, that's absolutely a valuable part of a marketing plan. The people that tell you that digital is the only way to go and that's all you need and that's all you should be doing are just as wrong as the people telling you that the internet's a fad and all you should be doing is print and terrestrial radio. Like, those are the only things that matter. They're both wrong. They're just wrong in different ways. But good marketing should have a place in every room of the house.
Well said. Trent, where can folks find you if they want to continue the conversation?
If they want to look for me, they can find me on pretty much all of the social platforms myself. Riton is all the social platforms myself. I try not to draw too much attention to myself, but some of my better conversations, obviously, they know where to find you, and I'm a common commenter in that comment section on the Backcountry Marketing Podcast area, and we can connect there because I always have thoughts that I'm willing to share. So find me on LinkedIn, and we can get into it over there.
Incredible. Well, Trent, thanks for the conversation. I love some of the topics and the ideas that you've shared today. You've given me a lot to think about. Trent, thanks again. It was great chatting. I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah.
I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.